Well, welcome back to our study on the book of Proverbs. Today we continue on in Proverbs 11. Now, if you've grown up in church or been to a youth group, at some time or another, someone probably handed you a tube of toothpaste. I know I've done this for kids in our youth group, and I've handed them the tube of toothpaste and I've said, now squeeze out as much as you can. And they all work hard and they squeeze out the toothpaste until it's all out on a paper plate or on the table. And then you look at the kids and you say, now put it back. And they work and they scoop and they scrape and they try to get back in. I've even seen kids take a pocket knife, slit open the tube and try to shove the toothpaste back in from the back or the side, but it never works. Some of the toothpaste always gets left behind. Some always winds up outside the bottle. And then you look at the kids and you say, our words are similar. As soon as we put them out into the world, it's impossible to fully take them back and make it as if we had never spoken them. Someone remembers. The person we spoke to remembers, and it lives on in their memory. And today, increasingly, our words live on in the form of videos. They're online that as soon as we post them, we lose control of them as they're shared over and over. Words that we write and put online, and they're shared over and over, and they are there for years to come, so that in years to come, you'll look back and they see exactly what we said. Maybe even something that we barely thought about, but we put it out there into the world and it haunts us years later. Our words matter, and our words impact our lives greatly. And so we need to think carefully about how we speak. As we go on in the book of Proverbs today, beginning in verse 9 of chapter 11, we find instruction regarding our words. Let's begin with verse 9. With his mouth, the godless man would destroy his neighbor, but by knowledge, the righteous are delivered. Now we look at that and we say, well, who would destroy his neighbor? But how often do we do that? We step outside, our neighbor is perhaps put yard debris on our yard, or he's done something that we don't like, and we launch into an argument with our actual physical neighbor so that our neighbors are at war with us. And I have seen this happen. I know of an instance where a man and his neighbor would routinely get into fights and arguments, even though they had to maintain their road together. I remember one time a family bought property, and these two neighbors on either side of them were in such a feud that when this family put a gate on their property because they didn't live there, they came back, and not only the gate, but the gate posts were gone because someone had ripped him out of the ground so he didn't have to drive too near to his neighbor. These things happen. And today, of course, thanks to social media, we destroy our neighbors all the time. We may not think much about it. We forget who we are friends with online, and then we go and we write horrible things about people whose viewpoints are different than our own. And we forget that some of those people are our relatives, our neighbors, even other people in the church with us. I'm always amused by how many people forget when they have a pastor for their online friend and the things they write that reveal their hearts. And so very often, today especially, without even thinking, we go online and we trash people without even thinking or realizing that these are our neighbors. These are people in our communities, with the result that we actually do see today society being more and more and more divided, families being divided, friendships being divided, churches being divided by the speech that is thoughtlessly put out online that attacks and destroys individuals indiscriminately without thinking about who those individuals might actually be and how we're related to them. Of course, this says, but by knowledge the righteous are delivered. By knowledge the righteous are delivered from the attacks of the wicked, yes, but also from our own use of language. By knowledge we know God has made the world to work in a certain way. We know there is one who will bring every idle word into judgment. We know there is one who upholds the moral order of the universe. And so we submit ourselves to him, and we are cautious to speak, remembering we always speak in his sight. There is a little Latin phrase that you'll sometimes see at the end of Christian books or articles, coram Deo, means in the presence of God. And it's just a reminder that everything that we do and say and think, we do so in the presence of God. And as we speak, especially about other people, we need to remember that we do so in the presence of God. As Christians, we are accountable to him for our words. And so we should pause and be thoughtful and ask, how would the Lord have me to speak? How would the Lord have me respond to this situation? How would the Lord be honored by these words. And so we need to be careful how we speak. And as we remember our place before the Lord, we will be delivered from our own destructive words, but we'll also entrust justice to him and in that way be delivered from the destructive words of others. Let's read on, verses 10 to 11. When it goes well with the righteous, the city rejoices. And when the wicked perish, there are shouts of gladness. By the blessing of the upright, a city is exalted, but by the mouth of the wicked it is overthrown. Now, this tells us that the mouth of the wicked overthrows a city. How does that happen? Well, it happens when people spread slander and gossip and separate close friends and bring about an atmosphere of suspicion and fear. Fear that someone might betray me and share my thoughts or mock me and ridicule me. Suspicion that that person or that person over there might be talking about me. Anger, as we actually are talking about each other and ripping each other apart. Defensiveness. The wicked spread division. James reminds us in his little book that wisdom from above results in peace, but wisdom that is earthly and demonic results in conflict and strife and all kinds of wickedness. And so the wicked, by their words, they divide families and churches and cities in ways that they should not be divided. They stir up animosity and hatred. They don't persuade, they attack. I saw a statement this morning, and yes, it was online language, and yes, I'm repeating a meme, but I thought it was really a good one. It said that those who are interested in brutal honesty are oftentimes more interested in the brutality than in the honesty. And I said, where's the clever honesty? Where's the persuasive honesty? And I think there is something to that in our current climate of extreme partisanship and wide diverging viewpoints. We need not more brutal honesty, but persuasive honesty, clever honesty. We need not to tear down the city by our language. But notice what else it says. When it goes well with the righteous, the city rejoices, but when the wicked perish, there are shouts of gladness. Now, sometimes those who use their language badly turn their destructive language on us. And we think, I've got to defend myself. And we take the bait and we're drawn into horrible arguments in person, in the workplace, and yes, online. Other times we're the ones who start those arguments and we think, well, I'm just being honest. And we blast people and we introduce such division and hatred that we tear the city down. And this tells us that the city rejoices when the wicked perish. I don't want that to be me. You shouldn't want that to be you. We want to make sure that our words are such a blessing to others that people rejoice when it goes well with us and not when we perish. On the other hand, when people attack us, there is a time to not respond. A long time ago, another pastor encouraged me by saying, every animal in the forest knows the skunk stinks. You don't have to tell them. Well, people get to be known by their character. And the person who is always angry, always negative, always attacking others, they get a reputation for that. And people may not want to stand up to them because they don't want to become the next target. But they know that this person is always negative, always attacking, always gossiping, always slandering. And so they take what that person says with a grain of salt. They don't listen to that person. I still remember one woman told me that I should not worry too much about what she says. She had come back after being angry. She said, she says lots of things when she's angry. And so she basically gave me permission, ignore me, because I'm always angry. And by and large, I didn't think too much about what she said when she was angry, because I knew she just let her mouth run when she was mad. We don't want to be like that. We want to make sure that our words are a blessing to others. And when we're attacked, we don't have to respond every time, but we can trust that other people know our character and the character of this other person. As just one more example, I remember some girls coming into youth group one time, and they were so horrified that someone had spread a rumor about the one girl. And I finally looked at them as they were talking about this, and I said, well, is this rumor believable? I mean, would other people think that this could be true about you? And they both looked kind of embarrassed. And the one girl was finally like, well, yeah. She wasn't living in such a way that her character totally denied this rumor. But if our character is upright, we'll be known by our character, our reputation will be good, and when that other person attacks us, people will know that person. And every animal in the forest knows the skunk stinks. You don't have to run around telling them. So leave it in the Lord's hands. He'll bring about justice. And unless there's a good reason to, a need to, you can let that controversy go and not engage in the division. Well, let's read on. The righteous bring a blessing to the city. The righteous build up the city, and the city rejoices when it goes well with the righteous. So what does the speech of the righteous look like? Let's read 12 to 15. Whoever belittles his neighbor lacks sense, but a man of understanding remains silent. Whoever goes about slandering reveals secrets, but he who is trustworthy in spirit keeps a thing covered. Where there is no guidance, a people falls, but in an abundance of counselors there is safety. Whoever puts up security for a stranger will surely suffer harm, but he who hates striking hands in a pledge is secure. Now we're going to stop there for today. As we look at this, we find out that there are two different kinds of speech, and the speech of the wise builds others up. And so it says, first of all, whoever belittles his neighbor lacks sense, but a man of understanding remains silent. There is a time for us to remain silent, and there is a time for us to speak. In general, we should not belittle our neighbors or mock people. We, as God's people, should engage with ideas, and we should defend ideas and truths, and we can make reasoned arguments against the false teachings and ideas that oppose us, and we can think and engage with people reasonably and rationally, and we can be persuasive, and we can appeal to emotions at times with our reason, but we can't belittle the people around us. Belittling people does not persuade them. It makes them enemies who are defensive and who want to attack us back. So may we give up belittling people. And when we can't do anything but belittle them, when we're just so angry that we can't say anything useful, then a man of understanding remains silent. There is a time to remain silent. We need to think and ask ourselves in any conflict and in any discussion, will my speech be useful? Or will it only inflame the situation? Am I adding something constructive to this conversation? Or am I only venting or seeking the satisfaction of my own desires because I'm angry or because I'm proud and I want to appear superior? Will my speech be useful? Will it be helpful? Will it be a blessing to others? Am I adding anything, or have other people already said what I want to say and perhaps even said it better? Well, a man of understanding sometimes remains silent, and sometimes silence is the best course of action. And so we need to ask those questions. It says, whoever goes about slandering reveals secrets, but he who is trustworthy in spirit keeps a thing covered. Now, this to us sounds almost wrong because we teach our children, don't keep secrets, especially if someone else asks you to. And we live in an age when various scandals have been covered up and they've come to light, and they needed to come to light so that people could face justice. This isn't talking about keeping crimes secret. This is not talking about keeping, abuse secret. This is instead talking about spreading gossip and slander. This is talking about understanding that there is a proper time to cover over someone's errors rather than to broadcast them. Not abuse, not crimes, but errors. Sometimes people misspeak, and we don't need to broadcast that to everyone to humiliate them. Sometimes people do genuinely have bad days and they speak out of character. And rather than broadcasting that to the world and mocking them or calling out the mob to attack them, we need to understand that we, all of us, according to James, stumble in our speech in various ways. And if anyone is perfect in his speech, he's a perfect person. And so we need to be gracious to one another. When someone misspeaks, think the best of them. Assume the best rather than the worst until you're proven wrong. If you are proven wrong, understand that this might be out of character for the person. And so maybe cover it over. Perhaps you need to start by going to the individual and talking with the individual. Did you mean this? Why did you say this? What did you mean by this? Rather than summarizing it and broadcasting your version of it out to the world, or talking with other people about it rather than that individual. Go to the individual first And if you make it right with the individual, then there's no need to talk about it with other people for the good of others. And because it's what we would want them to do for us. At times, we need to cover over the errors that we all make. This is an act of love. It's an act of the wise who brings healing and peace rather than division and discord. And so the man of understanding is sometimes silent. Sometimes he keeps a thing covered. And keeping a thing covered, by the way, ask yourself, is this in character or out of character for this person? Perhaps if it's out of character, rather than saying, why did you say this? We need to say, hey, I noticed you said this. It seems out of character for you. Is everything okay? And we need to consider that if a person is acting radically out of character, perhaps there is something wrong. And rather than outrage, what they need is compassion and help. We need to ask, is it in character or out of character? Is it a one-time mistake or is it an ongoing habit? How severe was it? Is it something that can be overlooked? Something shouldn't be overlooked. But if it's a one-time thing, if it's an error, if it's inadvertent, if it's a bad day, sometimes we can overlook and keep a thing covered. Verse 14 reminds us that where there is no guidance, a people falls, but in abundance of counselors, there is safety. Boy, we need this today. Today, we tend to listen only to those people who already agree with us on everything. And the result is that we dig into our own camps and we think that those who disagree with us are entirely irrational. And we can't live that way. That is the kind of speech that tears a people down, that tears a family and a church down. Instead, we need to be quick to hear. We need to consider what other people say about our ideas, about our courses of action, about the way that we come across. We need to listen. And we need to listen to those who disagree with us. If I'm right in what I believe, if I'm right in my course of action, then there is no harm in listening to someone who disagrees with me. If I'm right and if my actions and my ideas are well thought out, then if someone disagrees with me, I should have a reasonable answer for their objections. I should be able to say, I hear you, I understand you, I have weighed your objections, and here is why I disagree, rather than just plugging our ears and saying, don't talk to me, I don't want to hear it. You're irrational. Nobody holds something in a way that they themselves believe is irrational. Each and every one of us at least believes in ourselves that our beliefs and our actions are rational and well justified. And the way that we find out that they are not is by listening to others. And so we may just find, as we are willing to listen to others who have a different viewpoint, that our own gut reaction, our own insights, perhaps they need to be adjusted. Nuanced, not entirely thrown out, but nuanced. Or perhaps they do need to be entirely thrown out. Now, let me just give you an example of an instance where I listened to someone else and had my mind changed. I grew up knowing that you don't call black people colored. I was horrified once in Kansas when a man visited our church and another man said, you know, we once had a colored man here and I so appreciated him and you'll be welcome here. And I looked at that, the other man, and I was like, I am so sorry. He said, oh no, he's trying to show me that he loves me and I appreciate that. So there's an example of a man who covered over something that could have been offensive, but he saw the heart of this other man behind it and said, you know, this older man, he's trying. And he covered over. So I know you don't say that, though. I grew up even being uncomfortable saying a black person. I learned that you say African American. And so most of my life, I've said African American. But in recent years, I've noticed that everyone's talking about the black community and black people. And so I asked my wife about this, who is herself Hispanic. I said, you know, what's the deal? I thought we weren't supposed to say black. And I was getting kind of offended by this myself. And she said, well, you know, not everyone's from Africa just because they have dark skin. And so African American is not actually the most correct way to identify people. And, you know, if that community wants to be called black, then you should. And I started to get angry and say, you know, this is just ridiculous word games. And why are we playing these word games? And why does everything have to change? And she finally looked at me and she said, well, aren't you supposed to love people? And if you're going to love them well, do you want to needlessly offend them by using terms that they think are offensive? And if you think this is, trivial, then why don't you change? I thought about it and I realized, you know what? She's right. If I think it's not a big enough deal that other people should be angry with me about it, why should I be angry with them? And why should I hold on to my ways? And why shouldn't I change and speak in ways that are not offensive to other people? Why should I be needlessly offensive? And so I listened to her, and she changed my mind. I was wrong. And if I only listened to those who agreed with me, I wouldn't have come to that conclusion. And there have been several times where, as I've listened to the other side of an argument, I've realized I have never heard a good argument from the other side. And sometimes the arguments on the other side of an issue are actually persuasive and are good and are biblically sound. And so I have adjusted or even changed my views on different things because I've heard someone make a solid biblical argument or argue the implications of the Bible. So today, the wise listen to many counselors. Listen to even those they disagree with. And if nothing else, you should have an answer for those you disagree with and be able to say, I have thought about it and here's why I still think I am right. So we need to be careful that we listen to the many advisors that are out there and not simply to the people who disagree with us. And then for our ending today, whoever puts up security for a stranger will surely suffer harm, but he who hates striking hands in pledge is secure. So last point about being cautious with our words is we need to be very careful concerning what pledges we make, what promises we make. We need to be careful that we don't promise more than we can deliver. That especially when we talk with our kids, what we say is what we'll actually hold to, and that we are consistent and that we don't go back on it. It's very interesting in the Bible, the Lord holds us to our words. So Joshua is told to get rid of all the people in the land of Canaan, not to make any treaties with them. But then the Gibeonites come to Joshua and they come in disguise and they say, we're not from this land, we're from far away. Make a treaty with us. And Joshua doesn't pray. He says, great. He makes a treaty with them. Then he finds out that they are from the land. And, I'm going, well, you just made a treaty with them and they came to you under false pretenses and they lied. That should invalidate the whole thing. But God holds Joshua and Israel to their promises. He says, hey, you forgot to come and ask me. Now you're bound by your words. And in the New Testament, Jesus says that our yes should be yes, our no should be no, and we shouldn't have any need for pledges. And one commentary says that what Jesus wants us to do is to speak as if every word is under oath. And so this is reminding us to be careful what you say. Be careful what promises you make. Be careful what you bind yourself to do or not to do, because you are held responsible by God for your pledges. And so whether you're pledging marriage or you're promising to make an appointment with someone and to be there at such and such a time, do your best to weigh those commitments carefully and then to keep them diligently, because God does hold us responsible for our words and the commitments we make. Now, in all of this, we see by his words, the righteous man builds up those around him, encourages those, and brings peace to the community, whether to the family or the church, or even at times to the wider community. The wicked tear others down. And as we strive to be godly, spiritually mature Christians, let us take thought to our words, speak more slowly, type more slowly, send more slowly, and ask ourselves, will this glorify God and bless those I am speaking to? And with that, I'll leave you until next time. Thanks for joining me.